Why is leadership important? Hey, I'm Jonno White, founder of Clarity, and I'm going to give you 3 tips today around why leadership is important, and I'm going to unpack these 3 things to help you become the very best leader you can be. As I said, it's Jonno White here. Welcome to the Jonno White Leadership Podcast. I coach leaders around the world, and I just want to thank all of you who are watching or listening for subscribing, following, liking, sharing. If you haven't done that, please do that now. Click that button because that helps us to help more leaders become the very best they can be. But let's dive straight in. Why is leadership important? Well, John Maxwell, who you might have heard of, has a great saying that leadership is influence. And I think as a starting point, that's good. But I remember for me, stepping into a role, into one of my first roles at a store when I was maybe in grade 11, and I stepped into a role in retail at a store called Amart All Sports. Any Aussie friends remember Amart All Sports? They've now been bought out by Rebel Sport. But back then I was in grade 11, it was my first retail job. And I remember having a store manager who was pretty switched on. And to be honest, the last thing I wanted to do, I wanted to make some money, but I certainly wasn't the best employee in my opinion, now looking back. I was a bit slow to get things done. I'm not the most observant person, so when people, I spent some time in the shoe section, and when someone wanted a new pair of shoes, I wouldn't always find it for them at all or very quickly. But I remember this store manager just making a difference in my life, because I found the way he led the store meant that when I was there, I really enjoyed it. And I've been in other settings and other scenarios where I've had a leader, and I just remember feeling so discouraged and so disappointed when I had a leader that just really looked through me, or didn't give me any recognition or any feedback, or didn't care, or without realizing it was just making messes everywhere. And I remember how discouraging that can be. And so I want to tell you that why is leadership important? Leadership creates the ceiling. Leadership creates the ceiling. There's a saying that I use in teams. I'm in a room with a team all the time, and one of the things I need to help teams with is to understand the role of who the leader is in the room, their leader. So I'm trying to support the leader. They're usually my client. But I really want the team to understand something. They need to be able to have robust discussions. But there's a couple of things that they need to realize. And I tell this to teams all the time. And I work with great leaders, which means that the leaders I work with are fantastic leaders and fantastic people, so I can say this. But I say the leader goes first. So when we do a vulnerable exercise, the leader goes first. But at the other end of the spectrum, who's our tiebreaker? When everyone's disagreeing, but we need to make a decision, because we don't have 6 hours to talk about this important thing. We've only got 2, and we need to make a call. We need to make a decision. Who makes the decision in the room? The leader. And so what I say to teams is this guy, this girl, right here, she is the ceiling. And that's why you need to have some empathy for her. Because I get her to go first, because I know this team will only go as vulnerable as she goes. And she knows this, because I've told her. But that's what I say to teams. And so that's why leadership is important. If you don't think leadership is important, then go and work in a team or an organization with a leader with a low ceiling. And what I mean by that is not a low ceiling necessarily in competency. It can be that's important. But particularly things like vulnerability. You go and work for a leader who's not good at being vulnerable at all. And you watch how the culture of vulnerability is stifled in that place. Why? Because that leader is creating a low ceiling. You go and work with a leader who's low when it comes to emotional intelligence. So they just don't pick up on cues. And you watch the culture in that place, emotional intelligence won't flourish. Why? Because the leader is the ceiling. You go and you want to work in a place that's really generous, but you have a leader who's got a low ceiling in generosity, and what are you going to find? You're not going to have a generous culture. Why? Because the leader is the ceiling. So why is leadership important? Leadership raises the ceiling for the whole organization. Well, leadership creates the ceiling. So if you can improve as a leader, or if you're on the board and you're hiring a leader, or you're looking to work somewhere, find a leader with a high ceiling of vulnerability. with a high ceiling of character, with a high ceiling of generosity, with a high ceiling of emotional intelligence. And what you'll find is you're in a place where there's lots of space to grow. And as the leader continues to learn, the company culture can actually expand. But if you go to a leader who's here, that'll be the ceiling. So 3 tips around why leadership is important. And the first thing is, if you're watching this, you're probably interested in leadership. So I want to ask you, what's your ceiling? What's your ceiling? You might be super competent. I work with a lot of industries where people get sent up into new roles. I remember seeing people, they step up into a new role because of competency. They're really competent in this area. All of a sudden they're promoted, but now everyone's looking at them and it's nothing to do with their skill set. It's all to do with their leadership, and their ceiling's very low. So what's your ceiling like? Be really honest with yourself. And how can you increase your ceiling? How can you have a mentor or a coach who helps you point out your blind spots? How can you read more books, listen to more podcasts of people who are doing things that are really going to help you? How can you have a circle of accountability with other people who are on the same leadership journey that you are, so that you can call each other on your stuff? That's really important, right? So there's some key things. So the first thing is what's your ceiling as a leader? The second tip I want to give you around this idea of why is leadership important is, don't say you're looking for a job. Some of you might be watching this because you're in the middle of looking for jobs, or you've just graduated, or you're about to graduate from study. Don't look for a job, look for a person. Okay, don't look for a job, look for a leader. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you find the dream job with a leader with a low ceiling, you're going to have a nightmare job. People don't leave companies, they leave people. People don't quit jobs, they quit people. They quit leaders. So find a great leader. If you're looking for a job, who would you love to work for? Who is there in your network? Go and ask your parents, go and ask your network, go and ask your friends. Who's awesome? Who's a leader where you have so much respect for them in my industry that I'm interested in working in? And go and have a coffee with them and say, I want to work for you. Why? Because I know that you have a high ceiling of leadership, and that's the sort of place I want to work. You'll be amazed how many people will be so flattered by that and then move mountains to actually give you a role. So that's the second tip. The third tip I want to give you around why is leadership important is I want to encourage you not to be unrealistic in your expectations when you have a leader with any ceiling. And this is really hard. This is really hard. The truth is, sometimes we feel called, there's a purpose to be somewhere, even though it's really hard, even though it sucks, but we need to be there. And that's okay. Other times we can be unrealistic in our expectations, and we work somewhere or we volunteer somewhere and we go, this is so hard, but I believe it can be better. Stop. What's the leader's ceiling? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? If it's here and you're going, it'll get better, it probably won't. Jonno, that's so cynical. Well, the truth is that the leader is the ceiling, and many people unfortunately aren't willing to work on themselves or don't have the emotional intelligence or self-awareness to realize. So if you're in a place where the leader has a low ceiling and you've been acting the past year like it's going to get better, the first thing for you to realize is it probably isn't. What does that mean for you? Do you still feel called to be there? Sometimes we do, okay. But that actually can be really helpful. I'm not expecting that their ceiling is going to go higher, but how can I be as effective as possible in light of that? And then if you're a person of faith like I am, then you pray. Because like I said, I think it's often impossible, but that's the whole point of prayer, is believing that God can do the impossible. So that for me is where I feel like I still have an opportunity to see change, but not by wishing, just wishy-washy wishes for someone to increase their ceiling. Now, if I don't feel called to be somewhere and I've got a leader with a low ceiling, the truth is it's probably not going to change. And so the question is, where am I going to go instead? Because if I don't feel called to be somewhere and there's a low ceiling, then that's it. That's the ceiling. And it's probably not going to change. I know that's not the nicest word, but it's true. So if this has helped you to be clear in your leadership, comment with the word clarity wherever you're watching or listening. I just want to thank you again for subscribing, following, liking, sharing. If you haven't done so yet, click that button. That helps us to help more leaders become the very best they can be. And it also means you'll be in the loop with all of our new content that's coming out all the time around all things leadership. Thanks for hanging out with me. I always value spending time with you, and I can't wait to hang out next time. Cheers.